Hi, guys. Okay, so we've already done the who, what, when, where, and why of the Transcontinental Railroad. So now we want to talk about the impacts of the Transcontinental Railroad. If you haven't already, you need to do the Transcontinental Railroad review in Google Classroom. If you haven't done that, go back and do it first and then come back to this. So what I want to do is, while we're talking about this, I want you to think about if it's a positive or a negative impact. And then keep in mind, it could be a positive for one group of people and negative to another group of people. So I want you to think about that while we're talking about this, and then you're going to have an activity to do after that. So the first impact was that it made traveling to the West cheaper and easier. So prior to the Transcontinental Railroad, it used to cost about $1,000 and take 4 to 6 months to get across the United States. After the Transcontinental Railroad was built, it cost about $150 and only took about 7 days. So it was cheaper, it was easier, and it was safer, because before they were traveling in stagecoaches, they were exposed to the elements, they may have had spoiled food. There was tons and tons of things that could happen to people in those 4 to 6 months. It was uncomfortable, and most people just couldn't do it. So now it was a lot easier, more accessible for people to travel. Another impact was to the Native Americans. A lot of these are going to be impacts are to the Native Americans. So you can see in this painting, here's some Native Americans right here, and they're pointing off into the distance, and you can see the rail line coming right through their land. So the Native Americans were granted land by treaties from the United States, and when the railroad companies came in to buy the land from them, they created loopholes in their contracts, which ended up so that the Native Americans were paid very little or nothing at all for the land. So it was really kind of sad. And in this case, a loophole is a way out of a contract, usually by using like vague or unspecific wording. So they almost kind of tricked the Native Americans out of their land. Also, as the rail line was built, it encouraged the development of towns along the route. So you can see here in this picture, we have the train here, and all along here, there's new buildings being built. The land is being farmed. Towns are popping up along the way. So it encouraged the development of towns all along the route. Another impact to the Native Americans was that, so when the people were buying this land and settling in the Native American land, it forced them to move onto reservations, which was land set aside by the government for use specifically for the American Indians. Now, you'll hear still to this day, there are Native Americans living on reservations. Those are still the same reservations set aside by the U.S. government way back then. And then you can see on this flyer, it's a flyer for Indian land for sale. And you can see how they were selling them here. And they're irrigated, grazing, agricultural, dry farming. So the Indians had gotten that whole land all ready to farm. And now that it was being sold to Americans. Another impact was to the Chinese immigrants. So we know from our who, what, when, where, why that mostly the western portion of the rail line was built by many, many Chinese immigrants. And after the railroad was finished, the Chinese laborers had a lot of trouble finding work because the Americans were afraid that the Chinese would take their jobs. So in 1882, the government signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which stopped more Chinese from immigrating to the United States and forced many of the Chinese to go back to China. So that was an impact. Another impact was that during the construction, the Union Pacific found an ally in the Pawnee tribe. So when they were building the rail lines, a lot of the Native American tribes were so angry they would attack the rail workers, try and dig up the rail lines, all the work that they had done. So the Pawnee Indians kind of made a pact with their workers right here, and they protected them from some of the other Indian tribes. So you can see right here is the Native Americans right here protecting the workers right here. So one of the tribes that was particularly violent was the Sioux tribe. So they protected them from that. And then in exchange, the Pawnee tribe were able to ride the railroad for free. So another impact was that the rail line allowed for ideas to spread quickly through areas that weren't previously settled or from coast to coast. So people that were living on California could now have easily conversations with people that were in New York or traveling through or stuff like that. These gentlemen are sitting on this train. They could easily have conversations, take their ideas back to where they came from, and kind of start new companies, spread ideas that way.